to the Plaiground podcast, AI's Place to Play. So today we have the pleasure of having with us Giuseppe Futia. He's a very known researcher his most late research is in the field of explainable AI, which is the main topic that we're going to have today here. He studied in Politecnico di Torino. That was his first studies. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay, Giuseppe? Because you've got a very long career. He also studied in the School of Data Visualization and Infographics, and has participated in the big data, hacking development and visualization and data science. He worked as a software engineer in a company called Celi, which is working on language and information technology. He also has worked as a freelance journalist in an Italian medium, right? La Stampa, it's the name.
Yeah,
I will ask you about that a bit later. You've also been a lecturer in the University of the Aegean, lecturing about visualization of linked data. You've also lectured in the School of Journalism, which is very interesting because I find this is very difficult to find, like the ability to communicate properly and also to know and understand a complex topic. That's very powerful. So I was very impressed by that when I checked your background a bit. And now you are working at the Nexus Center for Internet and Society, right? As a PhD student.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that correct?
Actually, I have received my PhD degree.
Right. That's true.
Working within the Nexus Center.
This was this summer, right? We were talking about this, and you said.
Actually, I discussed my thesis 2 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations, man! Congratulations.
It's quite fresh.
You must feel
preparation on the topic.
You must feel super lightweight now, right? Like you are completely free to get into another adventure or something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm ready for new adventures, and I think, in my opinion, I will go outside from the university because I also want to implement and doing research stuff in some large companies because I want to create the conditions for concrete applications of my research. So
we might talk about that later, because you know that here in Plaiground we're all about talent. So we don't care where the talent is. We are a different way of consulting. We are like, this is our podcast, but what we mainly do is consulting for companies. Okay. So we are all day looking for real world applications, and our business model is all about getting to the talent wherever it is. We don't care working with startups, with freelancers, with researchers, with universities. We don't care. We just want the greatest talent where spot on the application. So we might talk about that later if you're looking for that. Yeah, definitely.
Sure. We can discuss also.
I'm very excited because it's really cool, and I can already tell that you are used to communicating and you've got the skills for that. So that's very nice. Okay, let's go into it. I'm going to start with the question that we do in every program. So this is the question that we make to every guest. Okay, tell me about a science fiction movie or a science fiction TV show that inspires you for your work, that you can relate to regarding your professional life.
I think that actually maybe one of the most interesting series that can inspire me in my job was Mr. Robot.
That's the part you were wrong about, Rohit. I don't give a shit about money.
Okay.
Because I see that I think that it's an example of the increase of the awareness on the topic of computer science in the society. Mm-hmm. Because until this type of series, people who work in computer science or computer engineering, I consider it very strange, and maybe also this TV series emphasizes these aspects. But I have to say that the computer science and computer engineering are starting to be incorporating in the life of human beings. So people have increased a lot of increased their awareness on these specific topics. So we can start to discuss on these topics in main conferences, which are also analyzing the impact of on the society of this kind of topics. So it's it's the type of series that can be very interesting in order to understand this type of
The
world.
main character is quite a hacker, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's
He
an hacker.
sometimes he even breaks the law sometimes, right? As far as I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Maybe there is
you've got a pirate side on
the
you, I can
common
tell.
sense about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You've got a pirate side on you, right? I
Yeah,
can tell.
exactly. Okay, because the current common sense around the hacker is he breaks the law in order to reach his goals or to
Yeah.
demonstrate his intelligence or his cleverness
Yeah.
on the topic. But actually, there are many kind of hackers. Actually, the hackers, the background of the hackers and the main goal of an hacker is to try to learn new things related to a systems going in details. So it's the breaking of the law is another phase of the of this type of person. So
It's okay. It's okay. You won't go to jail for that. It's fine. You can say that. Okay, so that was the ice breaking question. So if you are ready, we can hit it. Okay.
sure.
All right. Time to play then. So I'm gonna start with a topic that we like a lot, and it's related to ethics. Okay. We are very interested. I think that's a very interesting topic, and not many people are talking about that, about the ethics of artificial intelligence. Well, we talk about it, but it's just like we just touch it a little bit, but people don't usually dive deep into it. And as you are an expert in explainability of models, so there's this aspect of the algorithms called the bias, right? The bias of a model, which sometimes makes the model give some results that are not so to say ethical. For example, I'm not if I'm a bank and I use an algorithm to estimate your credit score, right? How likely are you to pay me back if I lend you money as a bank? And maybe just because of the color of your skin or because of your gender, that changes a lot the result of your credit score, which might be mathematically correct, but it's not ethically correct. We should give equal opportunity to every different individual, right? So, what do you think about that? Does that make sense to you? It's just bullshit, or what?
Actually, it's a fundamental point. You raised a very interesting point because if I can spend just a couple of words on the explainable AI
Yeah, sure,
before
of
starting
course.
with ethics,
Sure,
because
give us an introduction
we should
about
frame the
explainability and
problem.
then let's go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Well, the current issues is that the current models, in particular deep learning models, do not provide human understandable insights on how a specific result was achieved. And in many contexts, the impact of this kind of technologies is very relevant, as you said, in the credit domain, but also in the recruitment tools or in the cases of medical diagnosis. Explainability in many cases is not only a desirable property of the model, but it's also, and it will be soon in some cases, a legal requirement. So
Sure.
it's a fundamental aspect of our world. The problem is that traditionally explainable systems are also constructed and built in particular for people that have technical background, so that are able to understand the artificial intelligence technology. The problem is that there are different type of explanations that can be useful for different peoples who have different goals. Because, for instance, in the case of the data scientist or the model developer, maybe an explainable AI can help them to improve the model to reach a better accuracy. In the case of the business leader, it want to understand, for instance, if the data source that represent the training set is reliable for his goals. And a person who received a decision based on the model wants to know which are the contributing factors that led to a specific decision or answer. And this is the point that you raised that is strictly related to the ethics and the fairness. Because the concepts of ethics, in my opinion, is strictly related to the concept of fairness. In fact, relying on AI systems for critical tasks depends on our ability to assess the fairness of these systems. And actually, there are a lot of domains and a lot of areas in which there are many fairness issues, because in the credit line, as you mentioned before, but there are also a lot of problems in regards to the recidivism prediction. For instance, in many cases, a lot of automatic systems, the probability that a prisoner will commit a crime when released were shown to deny release to people of color more often than to white people. That's a really, it's a really hard problem to resolve.
Yeah.
But also in the cases of human resources, in which AI is increasingly used to screen job applications to identify the most promising candidates. And the current laws actually forbid such systems to discriminate either in an explicit or in an implicit way by gender, by race, or by any type of disability. But the problem is that in many cases, also in the cases in which this information is not available in an explicit manner, some other type of features of the data can be used as a proxy. For instance, if we think about of United States, in many cases, the birthplace is a proxy for the race.
Oh, sure.
So in this case, data can be used in an implicit manner in any way.
So we are not escaping that. We've got, it's a problem we cannot escape, right? It is there and we have to solve it.
Yeah, exactly. We cannot, we cannot do, yeah.
And how can that? How can this field of explainable AI help in that aspect?
Well, if we think about on the AI-based credit lending model that are used by banks in order to...
Let's take that example to illustrate it. Okay.
In this specific case, there are a number of inputs that are taken into account to determine the credit decision, right?
Okay.
For instance, the annual income, the place in which you live. With an explainable AI, in these specific cases, you could attribute the percentage of influence of each input to the output. So in this case, you can easily, or more easier, understand in a more easier way, which are the influence of each of these features in order to identify, to understand the final decisions. And in this way, we are able to correct the factors that lead to a specific bias and to a specific decision.
I see. So we might, for example, say, let's give less weight to this input of the data, to that,
exactly.
and this explainable AI field, which gives you methods to actually calculate the exact value that you should give to that input, so that you normalize the output, right?
Exactly. The main idea is to remove, or in some cases just reduce, the importance of the features that can generate this type of bias.
That's amazing. The most important... it would solve it. It would solve the problem of that, and then exactly. We could still use this, because also they've got. I see that this is very good, because I prefer to have a standard way of making those decisions, because otherwise it's just the people that it turns out to, the person that turns out to be in front of you in the bank, he might have a bad day, or he might just not like you, or human bias is way bigger than statistical bias, right? Exactly. So I think it's better to use an algorithm, but then we find a solution, but we have created another problem with that solution, which is the statistical bias. But now you come here and Giuseppe can save us from that.
Yeah,
that
actually,
awesome.
There is also another important aspect that is related to the trade-off between the accuracy and the bias, because obviously when you reduce or remove a specific feature that characterize, for instance, a person, you could also obtain some, in some way, a less accuracy, a less accurate prediction.
Yeah.
So we just identify the good trade-off in order to create, in order to avoid the conditions for bias, but on the other side to maintain a good accuracy for your
and can we measure that decrease in accuracy? For example, I am the bank, okay, and I want to have a fair way of credit scoring, right? I don't want people just because being of color not having the chance to, I don't know, build their startup or start a family or whatever they are going to use the credit for, okay? But then I want to know how much is it going to cost me to be fair, and to decide how extremely fair I want to be, or how fair can I be with my resources. So can explainability also measure the decrease that I'm going to have in accuracy when I'm
I think
compensating the
that
bias?
there is a lot of space for research in this type
Yeah.
of field. So,
Okay.
in order to understand what is the impact of reducing this
The
the
bias.
dimension of the weight
Yeah.
of these features in order to reach the final prediction. Actually, I believe that the human in the loop in these specific critical domains
Yeah.
is fundamental, because we cannot think, we cannot imagine a situation in which the machine reaches its final decision in this critical situation. So I think
Sure.
that we can have to identify a sort of equilibrium between the final decision of the man and the support that he received from the machine. So I think that there is a lot of space for research in this field, but I think that the human in the loop plays a fundamental role.
Very interesting. Now that you mentioned about, well, we've talked about the impact, because if I lose accuracy in my credit score system, it's likely that I lose a bit of money in the long term, right? That I've
Yeah.
got some less people paying me back a little bit and so on. So we're talking now about basically also monetization of this. So is there any examples that you know about companies or use cases that people are somehow monetizing? So can this explainability be monetized, or is just something that companies will have to do, just like basic hygiene?
Well, I think that there is a lot of space for monetization in the field of explainable AI, because in the case in which when you don't understand how a decision or a process is made, you run the risk of making a bad decision, and it creates a cost and
Okay,
costs.
I get
And
it.
these decisions should be aligned with your stated goals, both in an ethical way and as far as underlying business value. And I think that there is a lot of space for startups in these specific cases, because actually a lot of companies, also obviously large companies, but also medium-sized companies, start to integrate artificial intelligence techniques and technologies in their processes, in their
Yeah.
internal processes. So I think there are a lot of space to create the conditions for generate an explainable AI and incorporate this explanation in the systems. And I think that startups can have a lot of space. In fact, they are receiving a lot of money from venture capitalists and in general for funding. Yeah, they are receiving a lot of funds for doing their research, because
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I think that there is a lot of opportunity for them, because in particular in business decisions, if you have an explanations from your system, you cannot justify your decisions at the end.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of stuff, and in fact, I've seen that a lot of on GitHub, that is one of the most important repository for softwares. There are a lot of open source tools that are emerging
Sure.
from the developers and from the researchers. And
Sure.
these are independent researchers, independent developers, but also large companies such as Microsoft are investing
Yeah.
in creating frameworks for a more explainable AI.
Can you give us an example of a situation in a company where a deep learning model, right, or a model complex enough not to be easily explainable is used to make a decision that you've heard of?
Well, I can tell you that there are different aspects on a process in which explainable AI can be really useful. For instance, in a company, they can be useful for model debugging, So we can understand why did my model make a specific mistake,
Okay.
or they can be useful for detecting fairness issue. So does my model is discriminating someone for
Yeah.
appunto
Yeah.
in
I
different type of
understand now.
domains,
Yes,
and
because
if my model is compliance with the regulation, because this is another important aspect, because does my model is able to satisfy the legal requirements that are
sure,
related to the decision, etc.
sure.
And more in general in high risk applications like healthcare or financial domain. In
Yeah.
healthcare, it's really important because if you have a recommender system in which suggests the use of a specific medicine or a specific therapy for a person, you have to identify all the elements that in some way uh, create the conditions for the specific decision. So
Yeah.
the explainability is strictly related with critical domains of application.
Sure, sure, I understand. Because with classical statistics, it's way easier to explain it, right? It's just, let's say in a hospital with the coronavirus crisis, right? They were prioritizing patients by age mainly and by health condition. If you were too old and you've had some lung conditions and there was somebody healthier that could be saved, they would just, that's super sad and that's very extreme, but they would take the person with higher chances of making it than you, and they would treat that person first. And
Yeah,
that's based in basic averages and statistics which everybody can understand. It's just we've had this many people beyond this age and they've got a 90 something chances of not getting over it, but if you are older then your chances are higher. Anybody can understand that. But if I told you, yeah, I've got this neural network in my office and I just ran it and it told me that you're going to die, so sorry, I'm going to take that. And what's a neural network? What are you talking about? It's my life, right? That's the issue,
yeah,
that's the thing.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
where are you?
actually, you touched a really good point because when you analyze the behavior of a neural network, you are able to see, understand which are the mathematical operation
Yeah,
within
yeah,
the computational units of the neural network. So
yeah.
you can easily understand that this actually
Exactly.
computations,
It's
but
working and it makes
it's
sense, of course, it makes sense, but we
yeah,
need we
exactly.
need a way to bring it to an accessible language, right? That we can communicate between each other. Non-technical people, we can explain, right? Why is this working like this? So that's the challenge, I guess.
Yeah, the problem I think is to create a sort of bridge between the computational systems used by machines and the symbolic systems used by people, because people reason in terms of objects, entities, connection between these entities. So the idea is to reduce the gap between these different types of representing the
Yeah,
world, because
yeah.
that's the main issue, and I think that's the main aspect in which research can, in which there is a lot of space for research.
That's crazy because we're talking about very conceptual and abstract ideas, but at the same time, it makes sense, and it's basically what we need right now in this field of artificial intelligence. We need to bridge that gap of it's communication. It's something we do every day, and we have a gap there, and that's an opportunity for people like you and other very talented people working on this, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity because the final goal is to transform the results in terms of accuracy or prediction of a model in natural language, in using visual artifacts, and also not in the case at the end of the process. So when the prediction has been
Yeah,
generating, but also during the process. So you create the conditions for the transparency of the model. So
yeah. In the
what
beginning,
happens
right?
during the training within the model?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the idea why some computational units are much more important during the training, and what does it mean in terms of the layman?
In this sense, I've read your research, and you seem to like a lot the graph theory, right? And you see a lot of potential in using graphs, just nodes and connections, little balls and connections, just to simplify it, right? To
Yeah.
understand and to visualize somehow these abstract concepts. Do you have anything on your computer that you could share now on the screen, or some example of a graph to exemplify this?
Well, actually, the most well-known knowledge graph, that is this graph which encode the knowledge in terms of nodes and edges.
Okay.
The most maybe we don't know, but for instance, Google uses a knowledge graph to improve the semantic search of its search engine. Because,
Okay.
for instance, when you try to type a natural language question, such as, I don't know, where Bob Dylan was born,
Okay.
in the past, you obtain a list of documents which included these keywords
Okay.
in the text, right?
Okay.
But currently, we are also able to receive a unique and unambiguous response that is Duluth, Minnesota, United States.
Yes.
It is the clear response to your questions.
That's true.
And,
Google gives you a little snippet
exactly.
with the answer, and then the results underneath, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This small window is
Yeah.
the result generated performing this type of query on a knowledge graph.
Okay.
Because a knowledge graph encodes the knowledge, so you can perform natural language questions and receive a specific and unique response. Because I think that the final goal of a search engine and the final goal of the information retrieval research area is to obtain the exact response, exact answers to your research, to your questions, not a list of documents which
Yeah,
include
sure,
the
sure.
keywords.
And do you think that will be possible with an algorithm? So I can somehow read ask an algorithm about what it's thinking to say, so that it's understandable. Like, so why did you make this choice? If I asked my algorithm with a query engine, right, in a natural language
exactly.
way, why did you give me such a high chance for this outcome or so? And then have an answer from the algorithm that makes sense.
I think that there are a lot of opportunities because the network structure of a knowledge graph, in which the information is encoded in a specific way, maybe we can create a sort of map or bridge between the network structure of a neural network to the knowledge graph. In this case, each computational unit have a specific meaning in terms of symbols that are understandable by humans. And also the relations between these computational units and these entities in terms of knowledge graphs have a really explicit meaning in terms of alignment.
So it could also, now I'm thinking about we could also program this kind of system to explain the decisions. Not so if I, for example, for the credit score system, right? I ask for a credit score for a certain client of a bank, and then today is just the model gives me just the score. But what about if it could explain to me why did he choose that? Like, so this is the score, and the main factors on these decisions were this, and these other factors are completely irrelevant. It wouldn't matter if you change them. This is why this customer is given this great score, and so on, so right. So in a way, we can understand.
Yeah, I think that it's knowledge graph can enable this type of behavior because
that's crazy. Yeah.
Actually, they are natively built to be queryable. So actually, there are some specific languages that you can use for querying knowledge graph and to asking information which is encoded in knowledge graph. So considering this specific feature of knowledge graph, you create the conditions for asking questions to the model.
That's
and
crazy.
Receive
it's
a
like
response.
reading, to me, it's like reading the mind of artificial intelligence, to say so, right? This is a very clickbaity way of saying it, which, by the way, it's the way I'm going to title this podcast. As of now, I've just decided that. So people, so to grab our audience interest. By the way, thanks to our audience for bearing with my clickbait. I hope you're enjoying it, even though, and I think we've raised the bar for the expectations, because this is actually just like when you ask another person, why did they make a decision, and they explain it to you, it's just like reading their mind, the process of thoughts of their mind, right? It's crazy that we're getting to that point with machines. It's just crazy. That's why I love this so much. Is every single week you learn something new that's being discovered or researched that just changes everything again and moves it a step forward. It's crazy. And regarding this sustainability of this kind of technologies, as they are growing very fast, exponentially fast actually, sustainability becomes another topic that needs to be addressed, because fast change brings stability problems. So in this aspect, for example, I would like to ask you, do you think that artificial intelligence and algorithms can be sustainable for let's say, I don't know, another more 10 years without explainability being solved? Or do you think that will become completely unsustainable at some point soon?
I think that in some years will be completely unsustainable. And the main reason is that it depends not on the technology, but it depends on the decisions made by people. So if people, in terms of governors or large companies, decide to incorporate this type of systems in some critical domains, including, for instance, healthcare or credit domains, etc., you need the explanations. You have to receive explanations for your final decisions.
Sure.
So if we as society decide to improve our life and improve our processes in terms of internal processes without companies and industries, but also external processes in terms of interaction with other type of services or stuffs, you have to create as unexplainable AI, because otherwise...
in this sense, a role in a company in the near future just for that, for actually explaining the algorithms of the company and keeping and reporting to decision makers on why algorithms do what they do? Will that be a job?
I think it's that the expert of explainable AI will play a crucial role, in particular in large companies, which have the resources in order to create different roles around machine learning and artificial intelligence systems, but also in the case of public administrations. Because if we public administrations start to make specific decisions on the data that have been gathered from people, you have to have a specific role that is dedicated to the explanation of the system. So it's fundamental. I don't know if there is a lot of space within a small size company, because in these specific cases you have one person.
For everything. Startups and so on. But
who makes everything. Right?
The data science then will have. We say we have the different cups, right? We have the cup for being a data science. Then you put the hat for the business analyst, or in a startup you do a lot of things. In Plaiground, we're just a team of 5 right now, and I find myself doing this communication, then also doing some project proposals, and so. But definitely that's again a new role in a startup. The data scientist will have to learn. We'll have to do some online courses to catch up with that and learn about explainability so he can address that situation. And I love this because we are usually told that algorithms, artificial intelligence, automation destroys jobs. But that's true. That technology is destroying jobs, but it is also creating jobs. I've got a niece. She's 13 right now. And I'm sure that her job is still not invented already. It will be invented maybe in 6 years or 7 years, and then that'll be her profession. Like, technology actually creates jobs we couldn't imagine. Who would imagine that role? Somebody whose job is to explain why algorithms make their decisions in a big company. It's crazy. And the many jobs that we cannot imagine.
Yeah, actually, I think the history of technologies in some ways explain this type of thing, because from the Industrial Revolution, we create machines for building stuff, but other roles in terms, for instance, of supervision of these machines was born in this type of context. And
That's
so
true.
I think that the artificial intelligence will create the conditions for new jobs, which maybe
even more interesting jobs, right? To me,
really.
What's more interesting, to understand how an algorithm works and explain why it gets the output that it gets, and be on top of that every month of your daily routine, or just to, for example, drive a truck all day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And because I bring up the issue of the trucks because the truck economy in the especially in the United States is quite big, as I read in The Economist a year ago or something like that, and the amount of money that it's going to be moved and automated, it's huge. So many different jobs are going to be removed from the market. But how many of them are going to be created, right? We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, we have to say that there is another phase in terms of jobs related to the artificial intelligence, because actually there are a lot of people who spend their time in order to label images, for instance, for improving image classification system. So
yeah.
any situation have a different there are different point of views. So we also need to consider this type of aspects, because it creates also conditions for very low-skilled jobs. But maybe in the futures, when the systems we will be able to automatically classify, for instance, images without the human supervision in terms of labeling, maybe this type of jobs will be cancelled, will be removed. It will do not exist anymore.
Definitely. I'm looking for a little TED talk that I checked that came to my mind right now about this, about automation, and it had the example, quite a few interesting examples about how in the Industrial Revolution in the United States, there was this huge movement of people outside from the agricultural jobs, right? And moved to the industrial place, right? And then what the United States did was to create high school. High school was created then, right? And 2 more years of education were introduced. It was a huge investment for the United States, but the turnover was even bigger, because then they became this world power with this workforce also very prepared for those kind of jobs. So I think this is the same. We must somehow invest in education, and then the trend, to me, I don't know what your opinion, but it's the online courses and the accessibility of information in the internet. I think we created the solution to that at the same time. Like, people can easily learn enough about artificial intelligence to become an artificial intelligence explainability expert. Learn the basics of statistics, mathematics, and rational thinking within, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years. If you want to go specifically into that job, you can become an expert really fast. There's crazy good materials there. So I think that's quite the history repeats itself again. So it's nothing new, right? It's always the same. We don't change.
I think in regards to this aspect, I think one of the most important point is to analyze and learn about artificial intelligence using a multidisciplinary approach, because the impact in our life of this type of technologies will be very relevant. So we need to understand this type of technologies using other type of disciplines. Okay, engineering is important, but we are also to include other disciplines such as economics, such as social sciences. And it's fundamental having a multidisciplinary approach to use and to study this type of technologies.
Definitely. I also want to talk to you about regarding talent and what we're talking about in jobs. It's very common to talk about the wave of open source projects today. These kind of projects tend to be open source. And do you happen to know any open source frameworks for explainability, collaborative projects on explainability?
Yeah, actually there are some projects and repositories that are available on GitHub as open source tools. One example is explainx.ai. That is a fast and scalable end-to-end explainable AI framework, which can help, actually in particular, data scientists and machine learning engineers. And this tool is useful in order to understand the overall model behavior, to get the reasoning behind the model predictions, also to remove biases, and for creating convincing explanations for your business stakeholders, because actually it's a really important aspect.
And a company is already. Oh, sorry. Yeah, keep on.
No,
I wanted
please.
to know if this framework that you're talking about. I guess that it's quite new. I mean, how many years old? How old is the framework in GitHub?
Actually, it has a couple of years of development, so
and it's already ready to be used in some use case, right? In production.
I think that it can be used because it creates a lot of opportunity in integration using traditional frameworks such as TensorFlow or PyTorch. So I think that it can be integrated in also more traditional pipelines, let me say, related to the
So
AI systems.
why isn't all the big companies already making using this? Why is this friction? Why they don't maybe they don't trust these open source projects yet too much, or there's a gap between the talent that is working on that project and the companies that need the solution?
Well, actually, also large companies, they are creating their own open source projects, and they are publishing on GitHub using publishing these frameworks as
Yeah.
open source. For instance, there is a framework that is called Interpret ML that
Okay.
is directly released by Microsoft, and it also can be used for different purposes. In general, I think that currently large companies start to release their frameworks and their languages in order to create the conditions for people to learn. Because as you
Yeah.
see, all the large companies such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, each of them released their own language to create artificial intelligence systems and deep
Yeah.
learning models.
Yeah.
So I think that they are in a situation in which they start to reach talented people and offer them the conditions in order to for learning stuff, which can be useful also for explainable AI. So this is an important issue. Actually, we have to say that they do not release their data. They
Ah,
just
of
release
course. Yeah, they just
the
release the
training
results
models.
and the
And
models.
we have to recall that the data is fundamental, because
Sure.
otherwise you
Sure.
have just interesting toys
Yeah.
that you can use, but the data play a crucial role. Also in terms
Sure.
of explainability, because in the data, in many cases, is also incorporated the bias that
Of
characterize our
course.
society.
Of
So
course. And have you ever have you worked on any of these open source projects? Have you contributed something on any of those?
actually, not yet, because
What are you
I
waiting
think
for?
that
We need you,
yeah,
man. You are very skilled in this.
actually, it's a good opportunity, for
Sure.
testing this type of tools, because I'm actually reasoning about the adoption of knowledge graphs for the explainable AI. So I'm currently reason on high level stuff, because I have to confess that the reflection behind explainable AI became to me at the end of my PhD program, in which I studied knowledge graphs, so which are really interpretable. I study deep learning models, in particular graph neural
Sure.
networks, which are not so interpretable. So at the end of my PhD program, this idea of combining this type of technologies come to my mind, and so I start to
So
reason on
we
that.
are witnessing the birth of a new idea. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
that
you're
at
gonna.
the end of a PhD program, you should start to think not on the work of the other researchers and people, but also on your own
Of
ideas.
course,
So
what are you going to create, right? I like your style,
yeah,
man.
exactly.
It's good. It's good. I think you got a great future there. So let's go with the final question. Before the final question, this is the not the last normal question, and then we go to the quantum question. It's a question made by a quantum algorithm. It's fun. So
Well,
the last normal question is what's for you right now, as of what you've read and worked on, the most interesting, impressive, cutting edge technology or insight about explainable AI? Something that might be only in the research realm right now. So we can go like, so the weird stuff now that people are doing explainable AI.
yeah, I think that the incorporation of symbolic systems such as knowledge graphs on deep neural networks and deep neural architectures can improve explanation, in particular for non-insiders, because right now we have a situation in which there is a lot of interesting research in the direction for technical experts and technical experts on the domain of artificial intelligence. But in many cases, for specific domains, you have experts on the domain.
Yeah,
So in the domain of law, or economics,
sure,
or healthcare.
sure.
So I think that knowledge graphs can play a fundamental role, because traditionally from the 80s, because knowledge graphs actually have a quite long story. These knowledge graphs, these knowledge bases have been built from experts from various disciplines, such as biology, finance, law,
Sure.
etc.
Sure.
So the idea is that this type of knowledge is really comprehensible for people that have a specific expertise on the domain and not on the technology. So if we are able to bridge and to reduce the gap between the technologies and the representation of the world in the specific domains, could be a very cutting edge. There are a lot of space for cutting edge research.
You're riding the wave right now. You're on the edge. That's what I love about research. Like you just there's a barrier when you learn and you move towards the frontier of the knowledge, and then you get there and you see what's coming next. Like just a reduced group of researchers in a certain field. That's very exciting. Like you're actually working on the next
really
big thing. It's so good. I'm very happy for you. Yeah, definitely. It's a very nice stage of your career. And congratulations on that, on finishing your PhD and getting there. Like, we need people like you. We need more people like you. A lot more people like you. Let's finish with the quantum question. You've got to trust me here. I'm opening a link, which takes me to an Australian university, and they've got this quantum experiment online, and we can generate a number. In this case, between just one set of one number between 1 and 10. Here, the minimum is 1. So I've got 10 different questions, right? Written down here. For example, how will artificial intelligence disrupt itself? What is the last thing you've looked in Google? You've looked up in Google. How many times have you interacted with artificial intelligence today? How will the world end? Just like that. Which is your biggest weakness? I don't know. It's just 10 different questions, okay? And we're going to see which one do you get. I'm going to run the algorithm right now, and the number is 9. Number 9. Wow, this one is really cool, actually. Number 9, the question is, what is your main personal goal right now?
Oh, really? My main personal goal? Well, actually, I have to say that my personal goal is try to help people using this type of technologies.
So you've made it personal. So this thing is really, you are not that kind of person who separates work and personal life. I mean, you could have said, I don't know, I want to lose weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. Or I want to become whatever.
Actually, I am in a state of mind that I would like to identify and figure out situation in which what I study can be really useful for people. Because actually, I have to say that in the academia, you make a lot of research, but in many cases, the direction of this research is related to improve the accuracy of a specific model, for instance. And I think it's a great thing, try to improve the state of the art. But as a researcher, I always try to identify and figure out how what I've studied can be useful for society, for instance. But also for companies, because I think that having good companies that have interesting ideas can create the conditions also for building a more equal and more good, a better society. So actually, I really focus on that because I finished my PhD program and I start to think how I can really improve the situations more in general using my skills, my competencies, and etc. So actually, I'm really focused on that.
That's so inspiring, Giuseppe. Thank you very much. Yeah, I like your energy. So cool. And with this, sadly, I think we've reached the end of this. I think we have to leave things on a high note. I think the quality of this podcast has been quite high. So I just want to remind our audience that they can tell us in the comments or at Twitter at our @plaiground_AI who would you like us to invite to the podcast if you happen to know any. Also, Giuseppe, if you got any friends and if you've had fun and enjoyed this and you want to invite a friend of yours, and you just text me and put us in, and we will have him very happily here as a guest. Also, remember that you can send us your most original quantum questions in the comments or at Twitter, again at @plaiground_AI, so we can refresh the list of questions, like this question that I just made Giuseppe. And also, obviously, like and subscribe to the channel. That helps a ton. I want to thank Giuseppe for his time here and his energy. This has been a very, very interesting. Thank you very much. And also the audience, thank you for listening and or watching. If you're watching this, wherever you are, you are the reason why we make this. So thank you very much. And well, Giuseppe, see you in the next one, I guess. I think we'll see each
Yeah,
other
I
soon.
hope so. And I would like to thank you very much for the invitation. I think that your initiative and your ideas it's interesting and it's very cool because you are opening the doors related to the AI stuff to the people. So you are creating, you are doing a very good job in order to create the conditions for make understandable some complex concepts. So I think
That's
it's
what
a
we.
really cool initiative.
Let's see. At least we're trying. Yeah, it's not an easy job, but yeah, we're trying. And thank you very much for your appreciation. And see you in the next one, players. And until then, keep an eye on AI and stay awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.